Welcome, everyone. In the interest of time, we'll go ahead and get started, though I see there's still a lot of folks joining us. But thank you for joining today's webinar on creating balance in case management. This training is presented to you by Switchboard, a one-stop resource hub for refugee service providers in the United States. My name is Megan Rafferty, and I'm a training officer with Switchboard, specializing in mental health and wellness. I have a background providing culturally responsive, strengths-based, and trauma-informed services to refugee and immigrant populations for over a decade. I'm a licensed professional counselor in the state of Colorado, and throughout my career have held positions as an intensive in-home case manager, a crisis response worker, refugee mental health therapist, program coordinator, and supervisor. Today, I'm also joined by my colleague, Tigest Coleman. Tigest is a licensed clinical social worker with over 20 years of experience working with refugees, immigrants, and other forcibly displaced populations in direct service, supervisory, and management positions. Prior to joining Switchboard, Tigest spent most of her career working in ORR's unaccompanied refugee minor program, where she provided intensive cross-cultural case management, clinical consultations, and recommended resources for clients, staff, and various community agencies. Her many years of on-the-job experience have afforded her a well-rounded skill set to deliver trauma-informed, client-centered, and culturally tailored services. Here is a quick overview of your settings in Zoom. This is a Zoom webinar, so you're joining in listen-only mode. You may switch your audio between your computer and phone at any time under audio settings in the lower left corner of your screen. Due to the large number of learners on today's webinar, we have disabled the chat box. However, you do have the option to send messages to the speakers via the Q&A box. Keep an eye on the chat for messages from Switchboard, and links to various resources we'll be mentioning throughout. Last, I'd like to mention that today's session will run for 60 minutes and is being recorded. You'll receive an email with the recording, slides, and recommended resources within 24 hours. The webinar's transcript will also be posted to the Switchboard website within a few weeks, since it takes some time to complete in order to comply with web and accessibility standards. So here are the learning objectives that we have for you today. By the end of this session, we hope that you will be able to, number one, recognize several common challenges of case management while identifying strategies to set healthy professional boundaries with clients. Two, describe ways to improve work-life balance, including shifts in mindset and self-care strategies. And three, utilize new time management approaches and organizational tools to navigate high caseloads. This webinar is a little different than our typical style at Switchboard. We have been receiving a lot of questions around these topics, so boundaries, work-life balance, and managing high caseloads. So for today, we have gathered some of our most frequently asked questions and are here to share some tools and strategies that we hope will be useful for you. All right, and now I'm going to pass it over to Tigist to get us started.
Thanks so much, Megan, and hello, everyone. I am delighted to be here to talk about one of my favorite topics of all time, boundaries. Now, I could talk about this topic all day because I've had quite my share of mistakes and lessons that I've learned from over 20 plus years of direct work. And quite honestly, these lessons have helped me refine my professional and also relationships within my colleagues and clients over the last 20 years. So as Megan mentioned, this training was created with the full recognition of the common challenges of case management and hope that we can provide some strategies to set healthy professional boundaries with your clients so that you can do this job well and you can do it for a really long time. I'd like to make this point that when we're sharing this webinar, we are not prescribing the only way to do it, but instead we're hoping to combine our forces and hopefully share some tools and skills that will be useful and valuable in your work. Before we get started, I would like to take a few steps back, perhaps, bring you to a center, the center of why you do this job. If you are able or willing to participate in this activity, we would love for you to join us for a brief activity. As you can see on your screen, you can scan the code, the QR code that you see on your screen, or by going to slido.com and entering the code that you see on the left side and join us. And I'll give you just a few seconds to land there. We've also put, hopefully Megan has put the link to the activity page as well. Great. Once you are dialed in, and I hope that I'm not seeing, is everyone having, yep, I could see people typing. So once you're dialed in, please take this time to share your reason or your why for doing this job. What is your why? Even with all the challenges that we know this job has, and we'll talk about those challenges just shortly, what keeps you in this field? What makes it all worthwhile for you to do it? Now, I hear that we're not the most or highest paid career out there, so just wanting to kind of comment back here. As you type your answers, and I encourage you to also read what you see on the screen, I'll share my why very briefly. This field holds a very special place in my heart as my professional work was founded on the intimate journey that my family experienced as a refugee and immigrant. That's my why. I share some struggles with my clients that I served while also really recognizing and acknowledging that my experience is limited and it is not a blanket application to the unique experiences of others. Now, what you'll see here is the most used words are going to get bigger. So I see that most of your whys are around helping others because of the compassion that you have, the fulfillment that you feel, the passion. I want to make an impact in my community, reward that you feel, right? To empower others to be self-sufficient and independent. The passion that you have for your clients. I love to help people, it says, because it brings me joy, right? To support for justice reasons, to enable others, to be a mentor, to be meaningful. So I love all this, and I see that people are still typing in. Please go ahead and share. Love helping people, to empower others to be self-sufficient. I think I've already said that, but thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your why. We know there's got to be something behind the work that we do, and I just wanted us to sort of just take us back there for just a moment. Again, the work that you do is hard. It is complex, it is demanding, but you do it, and you do it day in and day out, year in and year out, and you give it all that you have. Regardless of the role, every client and every need you work with have unique needs, right? And you are there to help them every step of the way. Having done this job for a really long time, I know the ebbs and flow of this work. There is never a dull moment, and I've grown tremendously as a result of my work. I've learned what trauma is, and I've also learned what trauma can do. I've also learned what resilience is and what resilience can do. The reality is that this job is extremely hard, and the reward often feels very small or far in between. So case management has many challenges, as you can see. Some of the challenges that we want to focus on today is the large caseloads. You have complex or high needs clients, the paperwork requirements, balancing the administrative and direct service work is hard. The low pay, you're overworked, you're underpaid, you're working in a trauma-exposed work environment, right? We are hearing or reading repeated stories that have trauma in them. We're testifying in court or we're interviewing our clients. We're bearing witness to the sufferings of clients or their families. We're hearing about it, which leads to vicarious trauma, the burnout that we feel, and sometimes that compassion fatigue. On top of all of this, we're operating on very limited resources to do our job. The lack of culturally or linguistically appropriate services make it really hard for us to do our job, make it really hard for our clients to access services. So why do we do it? The answer is in the activity you just did, right? All the why, taking it back to the why of why you do that work, right? It's the passion you have. It is the justice. It's the advocacy in you, right? However, all of this is hard. How do you manage it? Well, it's overwhelming, and without setting some sort of boundaries for yourself or for your clients, it'd be hard to do this job for a long time. So what are boundaries? This is where we're going to start. They are guidelines between you, the case manager, and your clients, perhaps. Boundaries meet several functions in the case manager and in the client relationship. Boundaries set limits, and they help us define appropriate, safe, and effective behaviors for our clients and for ourselves. Boundaries in a professional relationship are not like the yellow lines that you see on the street telling you not to cross the other side or the other lane in order to avoid danger. Our professional boundaries are invisible, but it could be just as dangerous if lines are crossed. Some of the types of boundaries that we're going to be touching on today are professional, so that's staying within your scope, using clients and responsibilities sort of as an outline to share what your role is and what their responsibilities are. The relational or the personal, right? This is that dual relationship that we have. Maybe we're trying to set some strict professional relationships with our clients, and that we're definitely not having friendships with our clients, right? That physical boundary, being considerate of personal space, right? That work-life balance that we really want to establish. So while all these boundaries are related to client case management relationship, you should also consider your work-life boundaries as an important part of your job. It's important to take care of yourself, and we'll talk more about setting work-life boundaries later in this presentation, but generally, this includes taking time or time off when you need it, or resting, or knowing how to tap in and tap out as needed, receiving adequate on-the-job training so that you could really be in the focus and in the know of your work, having realistic workload, and some personal safety for yourself. So the idea of how to say no, or how setting boundaries can sometimes feel like it is hurtful to the rapport building with your clients, has also come up quite a few times for Switchboard. Within your roles and responsibilities, boundaries are essential because it helps you, one, build trust and establish safety with your clients. It helps you ensure consistent and high quality service. It also helps you empower your clients in the best way possible. It helps with the establishment of an atmosphere of mutual respect, right? I respect my clients, and then my clients can also replicate that and respect me. There's also often ethical and legal constraints around that sexual and other relationships with clients. So having strict boundaries can help yourself from breaking these laws or ethical violations that you might get yourself into, right? It also prevents staff burnout. It reinforces that the relationship is professional. It helps with the support of equity as all clients receive consistent service treatment, right? So we'll talk more about this in a little bit of detail. So these types of professionals that we've kind of covered may be new to our clients, right? So it is really important for us to model it so that it can cross over into other areas of their domain as they get resettled or as they start establishing a relationship. What are some ways that we can set boundaries, right? The big question that we often get is, how can I set better boundaries with my clients? Well, here are just some suggestions that you can take into consideration. Limit self-disclosure and sharing personal details. Self-disclosure is only right when it is the right time to share. So really asking yourself, when am I sharing information or personal information with my clients, is a question that you have to balance out. Is what I'm going to share going to help, or is it going to hurt my relationship with my clients? For example, me sharing my personal resettlement story or the difficulty I had learning English might be a point of connection with my clients. It might be empowering. It might be encouraging to see the progress maybe that I have made. But what would that look like if I was, say, sharing stories about a breakup I'm going through with my partner? What does that do? So consider that. Keep physical contact to a very minimum. We have no idea the cultural context or the cultural translation of a physical touch or a physical contact. It is also a great opportunity to teach our clients appropriate physical norms that can carry over into other parts of their life as they establish a new life. I had a client, I worked with unaccompanied refugee minors, so I had clients that were, or youth that were new to this country. And in my earlier days, a hug to embrace was a natural thing that I did, right? But I didn't realize that that would carry over, or I didn't realize that me not setting that sort of boundary didn't help in my client now thinking she could go and hug her teacher. So there was some backstepping of steps for me to really teach and reestablish that boundary with my client. Stay within your scope of your role. Do what is ethically right and within your job or your scope of work. Setting expectation also makes it easy for you to be in a relationship with your client as a team. You can't do all the work, and the client is responsible for all the things that they have to do as well. So if our clients are fully and completely reliant on us, it adds to the pressure and worry that we have. It also creates an internal expectation that we will take care of everything, which is not possible nor ethical. Treating your clients equally and consistently is also important. Clients talk, I can tell you that. And so therefore, do not do anything that you wouldn't do for all your clients. If I'm saying I don't do home visits on weekends and I make an exception for one client, then what message am I sending to that client? Now, what about to the other clients whom I have said no to, right? Or what message am I sending to maybe my colleague who, if Megan is working with me and I make an exception for my clients, but Megan's clients are not receiving or getting the same treatment from Megan, what am I now imposing? So it helps not just with your clients yourself, but also the colleagues that you work with. Well, this one is a tricky one, but a very straightforward. Do not borrow or lend money to clients and set rules around gifts. Simple as that. I would say check with your agency or organization on this one, but I have a feeling that this is a universal rule. And then finally, seeking support from supervisors or even colleagues as you need it. Boundaries are hard, and so to set and maintain is really helpful so that you can have that balance, so that you can avoid the occupational hazard that you might encounter. All right, so how do I set boundaries without sounding rude? Well, again, boundaries are hard. It's hard to say no, just gonna say it, right? Especially for a field that is client-centered, you're here to help others. And also, oftentimes, no seems very hard and harsh to the eyes of those that have gotten, or that have gone through so much in their life. And so the question that we get is, how do I set that boundary? Here's a sample way to answer this situation, right? So I could say, I'm hearing that finding a new apartment is really important to you and your family. Unfortunately, I'm not able to help with that. I'd be happy to refer you to someone who, right, may be able to help you. Additional questions around this that we had received was, what do I say to clients that often don't respect my boundaries? How do I set boundaries with pushy clients who really don't take no for an answer? What do I say to that? How do I say no in a very respectful manner? Well, something like, I know that would help you a lot. I wish I could do that for you, but I am not able to. My job is to focus on this. So I'm getting a lot of immigration questions, and I know that is not within my scope nor my ability to do it. I can't really share any information. There's not much that I can do with my clients. So what I can do is address it, right? And sometimes saying something like, this is an agency rule, can allow clients to not see that as a personal upfront, but something that applies to all participants in the program. General guideline for setting boundaries in a firm but kind way is to validate the concern, the emotion behind the request, be understanding, be empathetic, set the limit, right? Providing an explanation for the limit is also helpful. You know, I wish I could help you with the immigration questions. Unfortunately, I just don't have that. Reiterate your role. I am not an attorney, right? Offer a referral. I see this is important to you. Let me see if I can connect you to our immigration person, or, you know, as of course possible, not just making a referral that you are not able to make a referral. So really show them that you care. That would help. Well, boundaries become easier and more natural with practice. I can tell you it is hard, but it gets easier as you practice it. However, it's not just setting the boundary, but it's also reinforcing it and enforcing them after you set them. So how do you do that? You give consistent messaging. Remember that consistent boundaries lead to better equity in service delivery and the professional perception of the team. Not just for me, it's for my colleagues, right? It's for the agency so that we have a better reputation. And it can help reduce the burnout. Communicate this boundary very clearly and effectively. Provide referrals when possible. If I get questions around housing and I just don't have the bandwidth or the ability, make a referral. Let your clients see when you're making this referral. Seek support from colleagues and supervisors. If I am tapped out, maybe because I had a really hard week and Megan is able to help, I can ask for support from Megan. I can ask for support from my supervisor. And then document and follow up on any boundary crossings. If you see a pattern of, you know, events, that is maybe an area that you need to clarify around. These types of professional relationships may be new to clients, so we have to model it to them. All right. One other one is, or a pattern that we've been getting is around managing clients' needs that go beyond the regular work hours or shifts. How do you manage that? Well, one tool that we could use is using strength-based approach. What does strength-based approach teach us? Well, all people have strengths and capacities to overcome adversity. It helps us to understand what someone has already been doing. It takes stock into their assets, their abilities, as we work to actively strengthen them. Our clients have survived and made it to here to be with us without us. They are resourceful, which is sometimes their resourcefulness is their survival mode. We understand that. However, understanding and honoring that perspective goes a long way. Provide after hour plans and resources. This was often practiced and reminded with my clients, especially with youth. I often use the opportunity to really relay that. I reviewed what fell under emergency situations and who to contact. Now, I had a foster parent call the after-hour line because his daughter would not go to a planned weekend camp that they had for her. Was that an emergency? Was I happy when I received that emergency call? No. However, that was a good reminder for me and a perfect opportunity to revisit how to use and utilize the after-hour calls. These are ways, you put this is what falls under this category. This is who to contact. This is also, a place and area to utilize other support that they have, which is also helpful for you and for them. It can also model how to interact with other systems and professionals that they interact and they are working with, right? Assess clients' urgency carefully. Now, ask yourself are you aware of the urgency that your clients sometimes have? Do you match their urgency? If you are often getting on the same urgency as your client, this is maybe an area for you to sort of revisit and self-reflect around. I know I'll mention this throughout this training, but really, do you jump and resolve every urgent call from your clients? Are you able to assess and help them and recognize sort of that and sort them out with them? Stick with your work schedule and professional boundaries. Be clear and concise about the agency program boundaries with clients. No waffling or avoiding the topic. It is my work schedule is Monday through Friday between 9 to 5, right? Now, is that ideal? Is that when my clients will need me the most? No, it may not be, but there are sort of standards that the agency had that we sort of have to abide by. Why do we do that? Because we know, and I've said this before, exceptions might sometimes become an expectation. Finding a consistent work-life balance is really not making exceptions to meet asks that aren't urgent. Now, are we saying, or am I saying, do not make an exception? Absolutely not. So every situation is different. However, gauge and see what exception you're making and what message that relays. Last, recognize and celebrate clients' unique strengths and cultural assets. Maybe a client is sharing with you how their car broke down on the way to work. Maybe during your visit, they're saying, gosh, my car broke down and I can't believe, and maybe in their sort of conversation with you, they're sharing with you the inconveniences that they went through. What can you do in that situation? Well, you can focus on how they handle the situation. You could say something like, wow, that must have been so hard and stressful. You did the right thing calling your manager to give them a heads up while you figured out some backup plans. You're recognizing that they're able to troubleshoot information. They're not just calling to say, my car broke down, I don't know what to do, right? So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Megan to talk about some professional boundaries a little deeply.
Thank you so much, Tigist. Okay, so that was really great information about setting boundaries with your clients. And now we'll talk more about setting some of those professional boundaries and ways that you can create your own version of work-life harmony. So one of the most often asked questions we receive is, how do I create a healthy work-life balance? This is a huge challenge in case management, often the biggest challenge we face, and something that I know I certainly struggled with a lot over the years as a service provider. So on the slide are many things that have worked for me personally, beginning with making some changes to mindset. For a long time, I got really hung up on my identity as a refugee mental health service provider. Everything in my life revolved around refugee advocacy, and I probably talked way too much about forced displacement to my friends and family. I was so passionate about this work and so invested in my clients that I forgot some of the other really important aspects of my identity. I have a lot of other really important things in my life and a lot of other interests and passions. So, our first tip is just to remember that your job is only one piece of who you are. Remembering the other things that are important in your life can help you set better boundaries with your work. We'll keep revisiting this idea of making changes to mindset as we move along. Okay, second is only working your scheduled hours. This is so hard. I know Tig has kind of hit on this a bit with client boundaries, but we know there are weeks that will be busier than others when it seems like all of our clients are in crisis, or you truly just have a lot on your plate. But do your best to leave every day at your scheduled time. Personally, I know I've worked evenings and weekends when I wasn't scheduled to in order to try to catch up on my paperwork, but there is no better way to burn yourself out. We all need to take our time off to rest and restore. We have some tips for managing high caseloads a little later in this presentation that we hope will also help with that. Okay, next, do not answer your phone or emails outside of your work hours. Don't even look at your phone or email. There's just nothing worse than taking a quick peek at your emails right before bed and finding, an upsetting email or being reminded of some work that you have on your plate the next day. Just don't do it. Keep the phone off. And another tip that we have is to look for role models who exemplify the type of work-life harmony that you want to have for yourself. So that's been a really helpful strategy for me. is sort of finding some other folks who I felt were really good at creating this work-life balance, and then considering what strategies they use that I could use for myself. And then finally, advocating within your agency. That can be easier said than done. I know that we're all really great advocates for our clients, but not always such great advocates for ourselves. But do try to talk with your supervisor about how you're doing and what you might need from them to help you be even more successful in your role. All right. So now I want to take just a brief pause to go back and consider that suggestion about making changes to your mindset. So take a moment and share, what are some aspects of your identity other than your role at work? So what else out there makes you you? So I love this. Like, let's just take a moment while we're even here, all of us at work, to remember who we are before we move on. Okay, yes, I'm seeing lots popping up in our Slido, and I'll just share for me that I love crafts. I'm a quilter, I'm a knitter, I'm a gardener, I'm a reader and an avid learner, a good friend and a sister. And I see that we're having, lots popping up here: friend, family, mother, wife, sister, hiker, faith, religion, musician, photographer, writer, nature lover, gardener. I love this. Grad student. Wow. Amazing. Parent. Yes. Dancer. Yoga. Cool. Yes. So we are all refugee service providers, and we're so many other things. Like, what a cool, diverse group of people we are. And let's try to keep these other aspects of our identity in mind. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and move forward. So a next great question: how do I shut off when I'm off work? I know for many of us, we might have times when even once we do get home from work, we still have trouble shutting off that work brain. We might still be experiencing the emotions that we felt at work throughout the day or thinking about work. So how do you shut off when you're off of work? Well, one thing that I do every evening before I log off for the day is to write down any of my lingering to-dos or kind of random thoughts that I have about work that are floating around in my brain. So similar to journaling, I just jot down anything that's on my mind that I don't want to forget for tomorrow and that I really don't want to think about tonight. And like journaling, I find that this really helps me clear my mind and start separating myself from work. Secondly, I'll encourage you to make an intentional transition between work and home. So you can do this in a number of different ways, depending on if you have a commute or if you work from home. So if you do commute, a really wonderful technique can be to find a place on your way home. So maybe it's an intersection or a building that you pass every day. And whenever you pass that intersection, decide, I'm no longer going to think about work after this. You can think about all the things that happened in your day and all your stress up until you get to that point. But once you pass it, you're making a commitment to no longer think about work. If you work from home, or if you commute, this is still helpful. You can consider adding in some other transitional rituals to your day. So when you log off or when you get home, you can think of finding some sort of touchstone that symbolizes in your brain that now you're home, you're leaving your work behind. So this could be the threshold of your front door. It could be the doorway from your office to your living room. It could be touching a light switch, turning the light off at the end of your day. It's sending a signal to your brain that work is over and it's time to engage now in your home life. Another idea, and something that I always did in the past that really worked well for me, was showering after work or changing your clothes after work. This is another really clear signal to your brain that your work day is over. You're putting on your home clothes. You're not your case manager identity right now. Now you're all those other parts of your identity that we just talked about. And then a final tip that we have for you, help you shut off, is doing some brief form of exercise or body movement after work. So that can go a long way to help you de-stress and shut off those work thoughts. We're not going to go into all the physiology of stress today, but it truly is a great way to release stress from the body. Okay. So another common question that we hear from case managers is, where can I go for support? A lot of times we know that we need support. We're just not sure where to go to get it. So a lot of folks start with their colleagues. That can feel like the really natural thing to do, and that's great. They can be a great source of support. Nobody understands what you're going through better than your coworkers. But our coworkers can also be really busy, and we can risk burning them out when we're oversharing or taking up time sort of processing with them that maybe they need to be using writing their notes. So instead, I strongly suggest turning to formal debriefing with your supervisor. I know that many times supervision can get really solely focused on that task management, but it's important to share with your supervisor when you need a different type of support. Maybe you just really need to talk about a client interaction that's been on your mind and you just need someone to share the details with. If after turning to supervision, you find that you still need additional support or a different type of support, you can consider developing professional mentorships with others in your organization or your field. Work mentors can be so useful for professional development, and mentors can become people who can help you find new solutions to some of the problems that you're dealing with, if they've been in that position before and have some experience. Also, I recommend seeking out training and new resources that are specific to your job, like those that we have at Switchboard. They can really help increase your confidence and your competence levels. When you feel like you know what you're doing at work, you know how to handle challenging situations, it can just really go a long way. Additionally, Switchboard offers communities of practice where we facilitate building online communities where you can feel heard, understood, and validated by others who are in your field. Knowing that you're not alone with what you're struggling with is so healing. And lastly, of course, as a therapist, I would be remiss if I did not mention that personal therapy can be a really vital way to address secondary traumatic stress, work stress, imposter syndrome, any other feelings of inadequacy. You can explore those difficulties that you might be having with boundary setting with your therapist. They can be a great sort of person to bounce things off of. And I know that many case managers also have their own stories of forced displacement. So if we don't process that past experiences, they could be really triggered by doing this work. So talking about those with a therapist can be really beneficial and can just help improve your experience at work. Okay, next up, what are some self-care strategies I can use? The term self-care gets thrown around a lot, but it's important to talk about what this actually looks like. Like, how do we really do this? It doesn't have to be expensive massages and gym memberships. So 3 buckets of self-care that are really easy to think in terms of are mind, body, and spirit. We've only listed a few ideas in each category here, but there's endless ideas out there. We have a lot of additional resources on the Switchboard website on the topic of self-care. So we're just going to keep it really brief here today. And we're sharing out some of those resources with you at the end of this presentation. So again, I won't talk about each one, but for the mental and emotional, as a case manager, I found it very helpful to focus on what I can control. So I cannot control the systems that we work within. I cannot control what other people do or what my clients do. I can only control my response to situations. I can control how much of my energy I give to things. I can control my thoughts and my attitude. And so, thinking about this and making these small shifts in mindset can lead to big changes in our mood every day. When it comes to taking care of your body, as we've already discussed, trying to find some time to fit in exercise, getting outside, getting some sunshine, it's all really great for stress relief and overall wellness. Trying to eat well and getting enough sleep every night are also key to self-care. Okay, and for spirit, this is not the same as practicing religion. though of course that can be an important element for those with strong religious beliefs. Taking care of spirit can include connecting to others socially, engaging in activities that you find meaningful and bring you joy. It can be as simple as talking with supportive friends and family, listening to music, or spending time in nature. All right, so here we have another slide up for you. We know that self-care is not the only answer to managing the heavy workload of being a case manager. In fact, it should really only be one piece of the puzzle. And we'd love to hear from you. What practical resources or strategies do you think would help you manage your workload? So think to yourself, what could your supervisor do? What could your organization do for you? And what could Switchboard do for you? If we were going to create some new resources, what do you think would be the most useful? This is your chance to tell us. Okay, outlook, kind of that same mindset, changing your mindset. More staff, time management, pay raise. Absolutely. Team support. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot for additional staff. Bi-weekly team debriefs. Yes. All right, it's moving around a lot. To-do lists. Volunteers can be very helpful. Keep having these kinds of workshops. Glad to hear that. Retreats, sure. Digital well-being, hiring counselors for staff. That's a great idea. Better boundaries. Yeah. All right. Walk to the waterfall. Yeah, get out there. Finding some time during your day to do something positive or do some self-care for yourself. Sure. Working on improving morale. Yeah. All right. Wonderful. All right. I so appreciate this. Okay. Okay. How can I encourage my agency to develop a more supportive environment for staff and clients? I love this question, and we get this question now and again. There are times when we can see that our agencies could be more supportive or inclusive, but when we're not in a leadership role, it can be difficult to navigate advocating for these types of changes. So here's just a few ideas that we have for you. Become a trauma-informed champion at your organization. So if we have an issue that's important to us, we might have to advocate for it. I specifically mentioned trauma-informed care because this is a great framework for supportive work environments that benefit both staff and clients, and it may be a really good starting point. So raise awareness as much as you can by talking about the issue that's important to you with your supervisors and in team meetings. If you want to create change, you'll need to start by generating buy-in from leadership. So explain to leaders why this change is important. For example, if you want to create a more trauma-informed work environment, tell them why it matters, because it helps staff feel supported. And when staff feel supported, they're more effective at their jobs and they'll want to stay and work for the company longer. As much as possible, bring the facts that support your position. Finding partners in your agency will also be essential when trying to create this type of change. The more staff and even clients that show that this is an important issue, the more leadership will understand that it needs to be taken seriously. If it's just one person voicing an opinion, they may not think it's important to other people, and they may not think it's a good use of resources. You can also talk with your human resource department and try to work with them on creating more supportive and inclusive environments. And finally, when you're working on creating widespread change, you can also work on creating a more supportive environment on a personal level. One person can make a big difference. So be a role model for the change that you want to see and be a source of support to others. Model those healthy work-life boundaries, share your resources, and do your best to foster a calm and supportive work environment. Okay, and now I'm going to hand the mic back over to Tigist for our last section.
Gosh, so many good things, Megan, and I can't believe we only have an hour to sort of package this, but hopefully you took some good takeaways. Now, navigating high caseload you haven't been there or if you're not there in your career, it's inevitable and that you'll get to that stage of your career when you'll have high caseload. So what do? One way to approach this is by utilizing new time management approaches or organizational tools to navigate high caseloads. I'm going to try to fly through the next few slides so that we can have some time to do some Q&A, some questions and answers at the end. One of the main questions that we got was around how do I prioritize needs when they are all important? Or additional question that we got is, when staff have limited time, how should they balance the needs of client services and properly use that time to also document the services that they provided? Well, start with an overall to-do list. Write down everything you have on your plate, or use a template or tool to keep a running list. Whatever tool that you use, just write it down. And then review the top to-do list and prioritize it based on Maslow's hierarchy and urgency. Now, I use my sort of big list to develop a daily to-do list at the beginning of the day. And then sometimes, if that doesn't get finished, it sort of rolls over to the next day. Whatever way or list that you use, I think it's a good one to start with. Unpack the assumptions that everything is important. You cannot do everything, nor is everything important. What is most important? Really ask yourself. Going back to the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, what it tells us is the physiological needs are important. What are those? The air, the water, the food, shelter, sleep, and clothing. That is important. Focus on meeting these needs first for your clients. When you're talking to them and everything is a priority, I would try to listen to the needs that they have. Second is safety, right? My personal security, my employment, my resources, my health, and my property. These are secondary to meeting the physiological needs that I sort of just had mentioned. So if your client's heat is out and it's going to be 20 degrees tonight, that's probably a priority, right? One of the most important lessons that I've learned over the years is that not every client's emergency is your urgency. Again, I think I've said this 2-3 times in the last sort of 45 minutes. Your clients will call you because they lost their wallet. They will call you because they cannot find their bus and maybe asking you to drive them to their job. But these situations are not an emergency situation that requires me as a social worker to drop everything that I have and run and fix the situation. Now, I recognize that there are some layers and context to every ask, and that makes the situation of saying no very hard. And what I also have to recognize is that I cannot sustain my work if I do this for every client. Also, consider deadlines, like the example that we gave you above, where the client needs to have heat before the night, right? Like by tonight, that will probably be a safety, not a safety, but a dangerous thing if they don't have heat when it's going to be 20 degrees. Now, if a client comes with an eviction notice and they have 3 days to pay their rent, probably going to be one of my highest priorities to find rental assistance as soon as possible, but it's very separate from an urgent one, or, urgent and important are two different things. After working through the most important and most urgent items, sometimes I go for the low-hanging fruit, right? These are the items that are the easiest to check off. It feels great to get things accomplished, right? I've wanted to file my client's files and I haven't gotten to it, or I've wanted to make connections that I think is helpful for my clients, but I haven't done that. But those are things that I can get around and I can just check off. For the remaining tasks, maybe the ones that you're avoiding because you don't want to do them or they don't seem like a priority, it can help to schedule time in your calendar or set your own deadlines for getting them done. Also, for the larger tasks that are overwhelming and easier to put off, see if you can break them down into smaller tasks, or maybe you can delegate them to someone else that is of a support role to you. We'll go ahead and move to the next slide here, which is how can I schedule my time to meet all my clients' needs in each month? And I think there was a question that I had answered in the Q&A of How do I meet all of my clients' needs? We cannot meet all of our clients' needs, right? And that is the first step to really accepting. You may not, better yet, you will not be able to meet all of your clients' needs for the month, every month, and for every client. Therefore, it's really important to prioritize the highest needs first. Check with your manager for direct service hours expectation. When I was in the field working with unaccompanied refugee minors, my expected direct service hour was about 15 to 20 hours a week. I knew then that I would be, some weeks are longer, some weeks are shorter, but I knew and I recognized that I was going to be out on the field for that amount of time. Now, you can check in with your supervisor or maybe just get a gauge for your own workload of where you're spending the most in each of your sections. Get creative with your schedule. What does that mean? I found myself moving the 60 or 1 hour meetings to maybe 45 minutes or 50 minutes, right? What that does that for me is it gives me extra 10 to 15 minutes to get ready for my next meeting, or to write down a quick note, or to go to the bathroom or grab some water, right? It sort of helps me to rejuvenate before I go into my next client. Scheduling follow-up tasks. That's another one that's really good and one that I utilize really well in my work, right? I take, so in short, I take what I have to do and I actually input it into the calendar and I make an attachment of what I have to do so that everything is in one place. But what it does is it also blocks that time for me to do that task. So give it a try. And then revisiting, and this may not be for everyone, but a suggestion that we have is kind of revisiting or rebalancing your caseload every so often. The per quarter is sort of, it could be for maybe some agencies or some roles, but it's not for everyone. I know I had clients that I had for many, many years. So really work with your client, with your manager to see if there's some shifting or rebalancing of caseloads, right? Okay, now, how do you stay organized? And I think I've shared just a few things before or leading up to, so I'll be quick here. I'm sure everyone has something that they use. We're not, sharing here the biggest secret that you've never heard of. They're simple, they're yet very practical, useful tools that you should probably implement. As you figure out a system that works for you, it's also important to consider your scope and program requirements and create your own sort of tracking system, right? Maybe you could use Word, maybe you could use sort of Excel or something online. Ask yourself, what information would be helpful to see at a glance? Maybe use some simple to-do lists. For me, having my clients' names, their service plans, their goals, their pending tasks, or follow-up tasks was important. I also noted in there the last time that I saw them and the next appointment that I'm going to be having. It was also helpful to have something that showed when your next service plan is going to be due. I had court, right? I had dependency courts that I had to attend. And so therefore I needed to have some certain documents that I needed to submit before that. So really putting and scheduling that. Customize a pre-existing template or create your own tracking system. Now, here is a sample one that you see on your screen. It could be an Excel, it could be a Word document that you keep with your clients' names or their service plans, pending tasks that you have, or deadlines. I used to do this and it's very low tech. It's very sort of, I started with a pen and a paper and a highlighter, and I sort of got fancy and I moved into the computer and started using the Word or Excel. So you could do whatever works for you. Also, master to-do list templates, right? There are things that you could just create and then kind of redo for your clients that can be simple to auto-populate, or reminders that you can put, for example, like release of information expirations or service plan expirations that could sort of roll in. If I have it done every 3 months, maybe I could schedule that in my calendar so that it could remind me to do it. You could also use free online, again, use your calendar, but you can also use free online project management tools. I know they exist. I've probably used 90% of them. However, the concern is confidentiality. I would not enter any identifying client information in this sort of portal because, it's client information, and then that limits the usefulness of how much I could use it. Again, last thing I'll say is use your calendar. If you use Google, go ahead and use, go Google on the best way you can utilize the calendar. If you use Outlook, go ahead and search the best way you could do that. I am not going to spend too much time on this because we did cover, if you joined our webinar from 2 weeks ago, this should be familiar to you. We know that balancing the administrative and direct service work is very hard, but at the same time, it's one of the most important part of the work, right? We have to document what we do, and this is just sort of a way for us to make sure that, or a list of tools that you could use to document. Documentation is an important legal tool that verifies sort of the provision of the services that we've done. So please look at the list. It's also in our webinar that we did about 2 weeks ago. We'll also send you a copy of this slide deck so that you could review them and have them.
Okay, we have just a couple minutes left, but we have one last slide out for you today. We've shared strategies that have worked for us, but we'd love to hear from you. What strategies do you use that help you find time for the administrative side of case management work? We know that we have an audience full of experts here today, and so it would just be great to learn from each other and learn about some new techniques that work for you all. Put it on my calendar, absolutely. That's what works best for me. Set blocks of time on the calendar. Yes, time blocking, Excel sheets, set boundaries, using Outlook. Wonderful, wonderful. Trello, yeah, Trello is a great free project management tool you can use. Administrative Fridays, I love that. Setting time on Fridays to do some of this administrative work can be so helpful. Do not disturb feature. Yes. Yeah, I still see more folks typing. Spend time in the morning when it's quiet. Definitely. Headphones, yeah. All right, using a to-do list. Wonderful, this is so helpful. Thank you all for all your participation today. We so appreciate it.
Thanks, Megan. I think I'm gonna move us to the next phase, and I'm so, we get this, right? This is not enough time for us to talk about boundaries. We would love, we would love to extend and continue this conversation in whatever capacity. So I'll take one question that I thought I would share. The person said, how do you work through the guilt of saying no, right? Even if the ability to say no is because of valid reasons. I say, and Megan, you can correct me, but really, if you can focus on the reality of what you're able to do, I think the rest is your clients will understand. If you give them those guidelines that we gave you, it is a good start for you to say, I am not able to, but that guilt that you feel is really internal that you just have to work through. Right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
All right, I'll get us through the next three. Go ahead, Megan.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, you can wrap it up just because we're at time, I see, with our learning objectives. We hope that we've met your learning objectives for today that we set out in the beginning. And here we have our feedback survey. Please do help us by completing this survey for our training. We always take your feedback very seriously, and we always use it to try to improve and create even better webinars for you in the future. So this is 30 seconds, 3 questions. You could use your phone to use the QR code. We are also dropping the link in the chat, and we would so appreciate it if you can fill this out for us.
We're just going to give you 10 more seconds or so to do this for us. It's really important. It lets us know what we can do more and what you want us to do less of. So take the time and please share your survey. And then we do have recommended resources for you to share right after. So thanks for your time.
Okay. Thank you everyone who completed the survey. Here are the recommended resources that we have for you today. You will get this full list along with the recording of the webinar and the slide deck that we've used today. We're also going to drop these links in the chat for you. Check them out. There's a lot here on self-care and, just balancing, the challenging work of being a case manager. So we hope that you can check these out and that they'll be helpful for you. Okay, and finally, here is Switchboard's contact information. We hope that you'll stay in touch and join us for future trainings. We have a long list of upcoming webinars on our website, so check it out. And yeah, we just want to close with a big thank you for the audience for your participation today, as well as your continued dedication to serving newcomers. So take care of yourselves.
Thank you, everyone.